No. Documenting process in Java. Okay, so that was chaotic. Hi, Vincent. Welcome to the stream. Glad to see you. Oh, and I'm in the wrong chair. Momentary pause while I rearrange the world. Was totally not ready for today because that's how these things go. Howdy, everybody. It is 2 o'clock, 2:01 where I live. So as there's been a little discussion in Discord, so some people won't be surprised by this. Hello, Eustace. Hello, Wagafa. Others may not have seen it. So conversation with colleague who's teaching our software design and development course in the spring, and which is a course that I'm probably likely to teach at least one more time. Yeah, still work to do in retirement. That's why it's called phased retirement. It never really goes away. So this is a course that I'll probably teach at least once, maybe twice more. And it's something that I've done a lot with over the years. And so KK and I were talking. Some of you who go back a ways may remember KK from about 2 years ago when we did an Ask Me Anything as a sort of a live thing here in the stream to sort of celebrate the first year of doing this. Hello, Vincent. And I believe you were there, Eustace. And I think Wagafa may have been there. Izitsu, if Izitsu's around. I don't remember if Vincent was there. I feel like Vincent might have been there. But we did this Ask Me Anything, and KK was the host. So KK is teaching the class in the spring. We are both part of a grading, a science collaborative grant thing where people from a variety of universities in STEM fields are working together on exploring different ways to improve their teaching. And KK and I are part of a group that's looking at alternative grading. Long story, you probably don't care a lot. But in conversations about that stuff, one of the things that we ended up talking about is that the students often struggle, and this is a course, so it's a second or third year course, depending on sort of how they got to it. And they have not done any particularly large projects. They might have done things in pairs over a space of a couple of weeks. That's probably about as big as they've done. And they haven't really they've used Git and GitHub, but in a pretty simplistic manner. And they haven't dealt with things like issues and branches and pull requests in a meaningful way. Absolutely the push to prod meme. And so one of the things that KK was saying is it would be nice to have some examples of sort of process, starting from an issue, creating a branch. So one of the issues that we run into is that students will make a branch. So let's say KK and I are paired up in a group, and we are like, okay, instead of pair programming, because that would involve us actually interacting, we decided to split the work kind of in half, in hopefully some meaningful sense. And I'm going to do part A, and KK is going to work on part B, and then we'll hopefully merge all this together at the end, which you can guess how well that goes. So we'll get students, we'll create a branch that is creatively titled Nick's Branch, and we'll just have a whole bunch of random stuff in it. And then, of course, you can't review the pull request because it's just a bunch of random stuff. And it's chaotic process, right? So KK was like, it would be nice if we had some examples we could share with the students of like a reasonable process where people have focused branches and focused pull requests driven by an issue, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, let's actually steal a stream and see if we can do something simple like that. Now, I agree it would be good to show multiple ways, absolutely. We want to avoid things that are overly complicated because we don't want to put them off. We want to give them a process that they think they could follow. We mostly, oh, that was weird. I don't know why my trackpad decided to disconnect and reconnect. We mostly have them locally create branches based on issues, but you could do it through the GitHub UI. I hadn't really thought about that. That's an interesting question. So yeah, actually showing examples of both of those approaches would be reasonable. So yeah, so this is the challenge, is Vincent. You've hit one of the nails on the head. Is that by the end of the software design class, they're in groups of 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 people, working across iterations of say 3 weeks, and at that point they really do need this machinery to be able to do their work effectively. But at the beginning of the semester, they're working in pairs, in fairly small labs, and it does feel kind of artificial, especially if they genuinely pair program. Like if they sit down and they do all of it together, and you don't have these issues of merge conflicts and things like that, it can seem like way much overkill. Absolutely an issue. And it is something we've struggled with for years teaching the class, is getting them to take these things seriously at the beginning because they're going to need them at the end. And one of the things we'll do sometimes, we'll bring students that have been through the course in early on to talk about, okay, here are some things I wish I had done differently as a student in this class last year. And one of the things those people will often say is, man, I wish I had taken things like branching and pull requests more seriously at the front, because then I would have been better prepared at the end. Absolutely a real risk. But the hopefully we can document things. They can take from that documentation whatever they wish. Yeah, right. Working on Unhindered EC would be a complete mess without some structure. And that's still a very small number of people, realistically, like 2 that are actually touching the code. He says holding up 3 fingers. But 2 that are actually holding the code or touching the code. But still it would be a mess, partly because, we work on something and then we kind of take a detour and then we come back. And like right now, you've got that pull request that you just made that'll clean up a bunch of clippy things, which we need to deal with that. So then we can sort of deal with another pull request that's sort of stuck. And so it's very realistic in that concept. And the EC project is bigger. I don't know that I would say it's much bigger. I think it's bigger in a different way. It's certainly older, right? Much older, because it's several years old now. And the software design projects, the project realistically happens in about 2 months. But, I think we could still illustrate some ideas there. I was thinking of coming back to a puzzle problem for starters, just because it reduces the amount of distracting context. But I think that, there are possibly, actually, it might be worth thinking about tomorrow's stream in a process kind of way, because we have this pull request we want to merge in that's basically done, but it's being blocked by this other problem. And Eustace made a pull request that addresses that other problem, and we could merge that in and then come back to the pull request that we are trying to resolve. And actually, that illustration is not a terrible thing. Like there was this problem, we made a sort of a separate branch, a separate pull request to deal with what was essentially a different problem, but that was a blocking problem for the thing we cared about. Like, I think that would be a good example. And you know, I don't think the idea is to have the one true example, whatever that would mean. I think the idea is to maybe have a handful of examples with some documentation so that students could say, okay, I'm confused about this. Maybe this is the example I want to look at. I would like to learn more about that. Maybe that's the example I want to look at. So catching up on the chat, Eustace, I think the process of learning sometime also entails just ignoring advice, failing, and in the end realizing that the advice was valid. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is, you know, and there are days as a faculty member when somebody's like, but I just really want to do it this way. And you're like, you know, you're an adult. You do your thing. I'm fairly certain you're going to regret that decision, but you will learn more by trying and having it, you know, not work than you will by me talking to you right now. At this moment in time, your best bet is just to go do the thing. And I totally get that. So, and then Vincent, yeah, the web project, it's more complicated in some ways than, say, the Unhindered EC, because there's the front end and the back end, and the back end's in Java and talks to a database, and the front end's in Angular, and there's the whole REST API between them, or WebSockets, if we're doing WebSockets. So there's a lot of machinery that Unhindered EC mostly doesn't deal with. Like, it's kind of a bunch of pure Rust code. At the moment. There are ways it could become more complicated like that, but that's not really what it's doing at the moment. I've totally had that experience. Absolutely. Eustace, you know, and actually sometimes I sort of knowingly had the experience. I know there are times when people have been like, we think you should do X. And I'm like, I don't see it. I don't feel it right now. I'm going to do Y. You're probably right. I'll come back to it, and I'll wish that I'd made the other choice, but I don't really get it right now, and so I'm going to do it my way, and then when I do get it, it'll feel like it'll stick better. It won't just be a thing somebody told me to do once. And I think that how we talk about the process as we make the videos is going to be important. Okay, so my idea for today is I was thinking of jumping ahead. So Codyssi, we had done parts 1 and 2 of the previous puzzle. Let's see. We had done parts 1 of 2 of Absurd Arithmetic. And I was thinking, okay, starting with part 3 of Absurd Arithmetic didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I thought, well, what's the next one look like? And the next one looks pretty plausible. We have an input, which is an inventory list like this. And these are ranges. And we need to figure out the total number of boxes in all of the piles combined. So this has box 8 and 9. This has box 9 and 10. But we're not worrying about duplicates. I guess not. So each pile must have its own numbering system. So this is just going to be the problem itself, a little parsing, and some subtraction. So this is not going to be too big a deal. I don't know what part 2 looks like. We'll find out. but we could sort of go through this, implement this, and I think that so some webby stuff. That's an interesting idea, and KK was sort of like, could we do a web thing? And this conversation was like yesterday afternoon, and I've been busy doing various other things since then, so I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. That seemed like that was going to require some setup that I wasn't ready to do for today. But I do agree that it would be a good thing. And actually, your comment, Eustace, about work happening in parallel with the front end and the back end, for example, would be quite nice. Whereas, I think, Vincent, like starting with I have never done a pull request before. Let's keep it as simple as possible. This puzzle thing could be good for that. But I think if we could work out a very simple web thing as an example, would be a good example to do. I didn't have time to kind of think that through today. And what we do tomorrow could be like the fifth example. So there could be a lot of examples floating around. And they would need some documentation and some explanation. And maybe some streams end up being just like explaining what happened and why certain decisions were made. I might have to go back and actually re-listen to streams. That would be weird. I don't usually do that. I think there's potential. So, I hadn't thought about doing as a terminal application to talk to a server. That's an interesting idea. And it would perhaps cut down on the complexity of having a web framework. No, it wouldn't have to be a terminal, but it's sort of an interesting idea because it would possibly simplify things. So what's the end product? That's a great question. Because as you say, completely correctly, the raw streams have many digressions. And that's part of what I like about the streams is the chance to chat about a variety of things. But the students might find it a little frustrating to have a 10-minute digression about something completely unrelated. So some editing could be a thing. Whether they're edited into something nice could be maybe debated. I don't know how much editing I would put into it, but it could be that editing it down. So you could sort of skip the digressions. I hadn't thought about fast forwarding or speeding up the implementation parts, but that could be useful. For the first one, I think I don't know. I think that's whether I would want to care about the implementation part. So maybe just some simple narration over the implementation instead of, all the faffing about that I tend to do and, watching Nick totally forget syntax and all of that stuff. So one could 1.5x or even 2x the implementation, depending on what, how dizzying that was. And then having some narration that's like, oh, and here we dealt with this problem and blah, blah, blah. And I did actually for this try to so you're going to love this part. So even, if it's long, so maybe even, something like 5x. So for this one, I did actually create a starting point code base. I didn't get very far with it, but I got the basic setup there. And you'll love this part. I'm thinking of doing this in Java because everybody loves Java. But again, since this is sort of I'm thinking of this as the first one, Java will be the language they know. And I knew you used this to be thrilled. Java is going to be the language they know. And I think for the first one, trying to keep the number of new things under control. Well, so Kotlin's on the long list of things that we ought to be doing and haven't gotten around to. And that includes me. I've not actually ever really used Kotlin. I've read Kotlin, but I've never really written any Kotlin. So it would be watching me flail around and learn Kotlin, which I think is not really what we're after. So I think we're just going to be brutal and use Java. Yeah, exactly. We can, Nick learns Kotlin. Well, we've had, we've had some students poke at Kotlin and be like, we should be using Kotlin. And I just haven't gotten to it. Too many things to do. Sigh. Okay, so I'm thinking, let's set this up in, well, and I don't disagree. I mean, I think there is a lot about Kotlin that is probably better than Java. And there's just inertia in the world. And that inertia means that there's a lot of people, us included, that are still teaching Java and probably ought to get with the program and shift. It's absolute legacy, right? I mean, one of my favorite exercises, and I don't know if anybody will teach it now that I'm retiring, but we've got a refactoring course that I like a lot, that I've taught various times over the past 20 years, on and off. And one of my favorite exercises is to take a piece of Java code that comes with, or came with, this is early 2000s, a data structures book that was just some of the worst Java code I had ever seen in my life. I mean, it's just so bad in so many ways. And then they refactor it, like clean it up, make it less awful. The thing that's interesting is it's pretty clear that the Java code in that book is some grad student was paid to translate some C++ code into Java, and that the C++ version of that book, that code was some graduate student was paid to convert C code into C++. And that I think the and I actually suspect the C code may have been a translation of some Pascal code. So you may be looking at Pascal translated poorly into C, translated poorly into C++, translated poorly into Java. And man, is it bad. It is really terrible stuff. While I would never want to use that book in a class, oh my God, not a thing. Using it for refactoring, so lovely. It was a great example. That's an interesting question. Unfortunately, it's so messed up and awful. It might be an interesting stream to actually take that code apart at some point. Yes, and then we can translate it badly into Rust. Yeah, that would be, oh man, that would be so bad. That could be an interesting thing to possibly explore, but not today. So, wow, yeah, it's just bad. It's so bad. Okay, so I got as far. Oh, well, there we go. We could try to go to Haskell. That would be. Is that even possible? I would have to think about that. The pain that induces in my brain is great, and I don't really know. So we've got some basic Java framework with Gradle sort of put in because that's what they're using in the class. I actually did not get as far. Yes, we could totally go OCaml. That would be a thing. I should open that folder. Browse. Documents. Actually, it'll probably be here, right? Nope. It'll be here and here and here and open. Initialize. Voila. And I'll just plop all this stuff into there. Oh, do I have separate scenes to record stuff without Twitch getting in the way? No, I have never actually set up scenes in OBS. I have just a single scene called scene that has the setup you are seeing. I have never actually thought about having the Twitch chat. You know, unless people in the chat would like themselves to be removed, I don't know that I object. I mean, I think that the chat is, well, two things. I think that there are going to be moments when I say something and it won't make sense if the chat's not visible. Now that could be edited out in post or rearranged in post. But the other thing is, like, this is sort of pair programming. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, you're talking to Nick McPhee. I mean, how professional do I care? Do I want to be? I think that the pair programming, the interaction part of it, is actually something I probably want them to see. The idea that other people, like, that there is a conversation to be had about what the right way to do something is. Well, right's a strong word. A good way, strong way to do that. Yeah. Well, I do have a be right back slide. I did get that far at one point when my back was giving me trouble. Woohoo! But I don't have a scene, and I probably should. That would be a smart thing to do. So it would be a good thing to do that, but I've never gotten around to doing that. And there are clearly, like, there are cool things you could do with scenes in certain circumstances. And I've never bothered making a decent background. You just get the room that you get. I mean, you know, so it is kind of chaotic. Okay, so I'm going to push this because I need to create a remote. Do I want this to be in my account or in the course account? I think maybe I'm going to put it in the course. Well, I'll start with it being in my account. It can be moved. So a simple puzzle in Java to illustrate process. Boom. So there is a course org, and I could have put this there. And I might move it there. I mean, this is just think. Oh, you're thinking actually like a Git course. That's where it starts to feel like it ought to be professional, in a way that I'm not sure. Actually, I want to do this maybe from here. Nick, oh, come on, Nick McPhee, repositories, So many repositories. There we go. Okay, so we have the repository, and actually if I move you down to here, so you're next to the problem. So we need to create some issues. Yeah, my GitHub avatar could definitely be more high res. I don't know. Sadly, I'm not sure if we have the paper version of the drawing anywhere. And all my scanned versions of it seem to be quite low res. And I don't know if there's a high res scan of it somewhere. It would be nice to have a higher res version of it. Oh yeah, there's totally a story behind the avatar. Does this? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, like look how low res that is. That's terrible. I expect that's visible even on Twitch. So here's one of these distractions we'll have to edit out later, or digressions. Our child, when they were in, I think, 4th grade, so that would put them at around 10, age 10, unprompted, like there was not a prompt behind this, but at school one day did a drawing that was sort of a headshot, as it were, of each of the 3 of us, myself, my wife, our child, and above or below, I think above was everybody's name, and below was a kind of summary of people's music preference. So Kate's was rock and roll, I think, and this is their interpretation. Did the Apple do its thing? Did I zoom in and out on you? Oh, that's weird. Because okay. If that is ever a problem, let me know and I'll turn that off. I didn't even think it was on. And there were red hearts. I did something and got it. Yeah, sorry. So Kate was rock and roll. Kate described my wife as smooth. Kate described me as weird noise music, which has stuck and is the family description of my taste in music ever since. But this headshot, this drawing of my face, just the best picture of me ever. It is. I've never had a better thing to use as an avatar, and it's weird. Like I've been recognized at events based on this picture. People have like walked up and said, "Are you Nick McPhee? Because I recognize your picture." And now it's weird now because of course my hair is so much grayer. Like then it was like a really dark brown, and now it's basically white. So in some sense, I need to like remake this so that it captures the change in the hair color. But I just love it. It makes me happy, and I've used it for all of my courses and web stuff for now 20 years. So yeah, yours is just a photo shot of your head, so which is fine, like, whatever. Okay, so issues. What do we need to do? Well, we need to we're going to need to parse the input. Actually, I guess we're going to need to figure out how we're going to store what our data structures are going to be. Is probably the first thing. And see, if I like found my university ID card and shared that picture, everybody would be like, "Ooh, he was much younger and had less gray hair." And I would say, "Yes, you're right. I was younger and I had less gray hair." So let's like break this down into way too much detail and say, set up data structures. So we need to decide how we're going to structure the data provided in the problem input. Well, this is going to be, so that's a risk, is if they feel like, oh, you've really broken it down way too much. Okay, so you both felt that way. Okay. Well, then is a reasonable first step to parse the input. And that as a side effect of parsing the input, we will work out data structures on the other side. Okay, so parse the input. Parse the input. Okay. Parse the given input into some sort of internal representation. Oh, I can't spell apparently. And actually, here's an example, or here's their example input. Oops, no, this. Let's grab that. Hello. Okay, I guess 3 clicks doesn't work. So at a minimum, I think a story per issue, often smaller, our experience is that they almost always bite off chunks that are too big, and that they need to learn to do smaller pieces. I think that just would help them a ton. And so, this is going to be, these issues are going to be pretty small. But I want them to think in terms of smaller issues, not bigger issues, because they, in my experience, almost always have their issues to be too large. I'm not expecting this to take a long time. And actually we'll spend way too much time building infrastructure for this simple a problem. But, the point is to think about the infrastructure and the process, not the problem in this example. And that's going to have to be something that we make really clear in whatever we give them. Be like, this was probably overkill for this problem. But we just wanted to provide an example so you can think about, how you might go about this in the future. Okay, so we're going to need that. Oops, I want to go back here. We should set up an acceptance test for the example. That would be a thing. We should have a test that confirms that when we run our program on the given test input, or given example input, boom, we get what we're supposed to get as our result. We should get 43. So I probably, realistically wouldn't make this a separate issue. That's probably a little overkill, but I figure, we can do that as a way to oh yeah, that's a good point. I could, and I should actually. I think thank you. And that also applies to this guy. Okay, so we set up the acceptance test. We have the parsing. At that point, we really just have to solve the problem. That's what I was thinking of doing, is having some kind of test-driven approach. That's another example that would be good to share. So like when we write the parsing, we could have testing that confirms that the parsing does reasonable things. And assuming there's a method somewhere that takes one of these things, whatever these things are, and returns its size or number of boxes or whatever. Yes, they're supposed to be. I think that's the key word, is they're supposed to be. So we can write some tests to drive some of that stuff as we go. And that's another nice thing about this problem. It's simple enough. We can easily write some tests without it getting sort of complicated about the test stuff. And I should say, I don't know if it'll be relevant, but the backup drive should be silent. Actually, the new NAS is set up, and we're backing up over the network, and so it's all silent and lovely. But I am sitting basically on top of the sump pump, and we have had enormous amounts of rain. We've had probably something close to a foot of rain in the past 2 weeks. And so if the sump pump goes on, there'll be this weird kind of plumbing whoosh, which may or may not make it through. It'll certainly startle me. It may make it through to you. I don't know. Yeah. Well, we could mark it as ignored as a thing until we're ready to actually check that it passes. So, and that's actually maybe not a bad thing to illustrate. So we can do that. I think that'll be fine. So I guess, is there anything other than the parsing? I mean, once we parse, we kind of, we could break it down into like computing the size. Like if this is, what do they call them? A pile. If this is a pile, we could say, compute the size of a pile as a separate issue. But I feel like also we maybe don't even know that yet. That sort of is going to come from, So maybe the next issue is really just solve the problem. Because anything else is going to get pretty super fine grained. So what am I doing? I'm going here. So we want a new issue. Solve part 1 of the problem. Guess we could share that link. Does that work out okay? Yeah. Well, and maybe this is being overly simple. Oh, yeah, thank you. Good catch. Maybe this is, this problem's just easier than it needs to be for this example. We'll try it. We'll see what it turns out. I'll share it with KK, and we can decide if we want to come back and do something more complicated. Because it does seem like this is going to be pretty simple. Now we could, as we sort of work this out, we could create sub-issues. That's an interesting idea. I've never used sub-issues, but as we sort of figure out certain things, we could potentially break up the world into sub-issues. Okay, let's start here. So we got these things. Actually, let's start by hitting this guy. And actually, one thing we could do, just to illustrate the process, is we could implement this, but not merge it in, and then start this in a separate branch, merge it in, and then come back and deal with this PR just so they would see parallel work, even if it's pretty artificial parallel work. But this would be pretty straightforward to do. So, okay, let's try that. GitHub Issues, that's what I want. I have to... I have no idea what Copilot agent mode does here. I've never tried that. Start a code space. Oh, this would set up a code space. In another, oh, that's because I did the drop down. I bet if I don't do the drop down, if I just did this, I think it would set up code space, and I would be sort of in a web-based editor with Copilot like helping me do stuff. Yeah, I think if the I think you're right, Vincent. If the scheduling were better, it would be nice to try to do some of this in a slightly more organic fashion. Turns out I'll be gone all next week. KK will be gone all the week after. So that's made it a little complicated. Or Eustace could do it. Or Vincent could do it. You know, I mean, who knows? But it would make sense to sort of do this with KK. Just haven't gotten around to it. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to actually... I'm going to set up the acceptance test. Wahoo. Use the force loop. That's right. You would just be doing free work for the university, which is probably not great. So we're going to create a branch there. Voila. And so then we come over here and in the test code. So I guess we are going to need to, at least for this to make sense, we're going to have at least, yeah, absolutely. If we did the unhindered EC stuff, then it would start to make more sense. We are going to want to have some kind of structure that takes so the students use VS Code at the moment. They will have used VS Code in data structures previously, and they'll be used to using it more or less, and that's what they'll continue using in software design. Yeah, there's pretty good support for Java in VS Code. It's not really an issue. What is this thing, and why is it yelling at me? I think that's just because I've turned off Google Gemini. Okay, that's fine. I don't really want Google Gemini to do this for me. So the question is, should the acceptance test actually just call main with a file name, or should so actually I think one of the things we need is a new folder, which is inputs, and we need a test input, new file, test input.txt, And I want this guy. Oh, hello. And you to go there. Yeah, exactly. Let's show them Gemini doing all the real work. So if I make that as a test input, and then I guess while I'm here, probably wouldn't be terrible to grab my actual test input. New file. Input dot, or I think they're all going to have the same input, so I don't think I have to give them separate names. Well, actually, so I was thinking that using the AI to do review, since we don't really, there's kind of this problem of there isn't like actually somebody doing code review. Having the Google Gemini Codyssi do a review on the PR doesn't seem to be a terrible idea. So Eustace, do you want to narrate some of this instead of just doing stuff without explanation? I'm trying to narrate stuff, but clearly I must have missed something there that you felt like deserved more explanation than I gave it. Oh, there goes the sump pump. So if there's something you feel like it would be worth me explaining, definitely like point that out. That would be great. So then coming back here, I guess if we just say main takes the file name as its argument, and then the test, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And I didn't really do that. I sort of just jumped in, didn't I? Okay. I can back up. So I want to basically blow up all that work. Boom. And then I want to get, let's see, local. Let's go back to main, get rid of this branch. Delete. I never can find delete branch. There it is. Delete branch. Yeah, no, you're right. It is the whole point of the video. And I just was sort of like, I don't know, in my head, I guess the previous nearly hour explained that, but that's not helpful because I don't want them to watch the previous hour, which includes discussion of the sump pump and other random things. So yes, I think you're completely right. We should start. That's where I want to be. I want to be here. Boom. Oh, nope. Here. Okay. So I want to be here. I want to look at the issues because clearly the sump pump is vital to this issue. Yeah, so they're mostly not going to fork repos because they're working with each other on a team. You would want to do that if you were obviously contributing to an open source project on GitHub, but I think that's a complication that I'll let go for the moment. Okay, so we'll start from here and then try to sort of explain our way forward. So here's our set of issues for the problem. Oh, actually, maybe even go back up one more and describe the problem. So let's actually do that. So we're doing, as just a very, very simple example, we're doing a code puzzle from a set of code puzzles called Codyssi. In particular, we're doing the supplies in surplus problem, or part one of that problem. We are, I'm skipping the sort of backstory stuff. We're given input that is lines of ranges like this. and each line contains two ranges of numbers, and each range of numbers represents the number of boxes in a pile. So this has two piles, box 8 and 9, and another pile with box 9 and 10. Down here we have boxes 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in one pile, and boxes 7, 8, and 9 in another pile. Our job is to read this and compute the total number of boxes, which in this instance is 43. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. We've gone through and set up some issues. This is a simple problem. In real life, you probably wouldn't do the amount of sort of structure, build the amount of structure that we're building here. But the point is to do this as examples rather than because this is exactly how you would do this problem. So we've gone through and created a set of issues. We've got issue number 1 is to parse the input. Issue number 2 is to set up an acceptance test for the example. So essentially a test that confirms that if we hand it this input, we get 43 as the output. We'll presumably build additional tests as we go through and solve parts of the problem. And then there's an issue which is just solve part 1 of the problem. We could potentially break that down into smaller pieces, but that would require kind of knowing how we're going to go about solving the problem. At least at the beginning, we don't really know what that looks like. So these are our issues. For each one of these, we'll create a branch. We'll do work in that branch. We'll create a pull request, review that pull request, merge that pull request into main. And hopefully when we've done all 3 of these, we will have solved the problem. That's the theory anyway. So let's start with this guy. And yes, I will assign myself as a way of saying, hey, I'm going to do this one. This is going to be my job. Notice you can assign multiple people. If there were other people in this organization, we'd be able to add other people. So if you and a partner are working on this issue, you could both be assigned to it. We can also create labels. We can add things to projects, milestones. This is all probably overkill at the moment, but when you get to the full project, that kind of stuff definitely can be helpful. So I'll work on this. So this is issue number 2. I'm going to start by over here in GitKraken. So you've got your set of local branches. You also have down here GitHub Issues. It will actually show you issues that exist on GitHub. And if you just created an issue and it's not showing up, you can hit this refresh issues button and it will check to see if there are new issues. The one I said I was going to work on is number 2 here. If I click on that, I get to see the issue. I can create a branch from that. I'll do that just right here in GitKraken. Boink. Create branch. And you can say what branch you want it to be based on. Main's the only option at the moment. And in general, building branches off of branches leads to madness. So be very careful about doing that. Oh yeah, and actually it shows up as assigned by me, which means it would also be in the my open. Yes, it is. It's in my open issues because I assigned it to myself. So even if my all open issues got really long, I could look at my open issues and see, there's the thing that I'm supposed to work on. So create the branch. Voila. So I now have a new branch, which is 2, because that's the issue number, and then set up an acceptance test for the exam. It cut off because I think example was too long. We could edit this to tidy it up. I'm not super worried about it. The issue number is probably the most important part. Okay, so we have an issue, and if we go over to VS Code and a branch, we are now on that branch. Yay, team. That's a good thing. So one of the things we're going to need, ignore that. You didn't see that. is we're going to need files that are the input files. So I'm thinking that main will take a input file as an argument and do the work and return the result. And so we can have an input file for this little test input, and then we can have another input file for the full input, which is considerably bigger. Right? So there's the full input there. So let's actually make input files. Now notice we could, maybe we should. Maybe we should say, that really should be its own issue. Now this is breaking things down very small, but we could say that creating the input files is an issue that ought to be done. It's a task that could be worked on. And so we could actually do that. So let's actually be all radical and go for the teeny tiny version of the world. And let's do that. Let's say, add the test input files. Let's say the input files. We need to add the test input file and the full input file. And I've set these up as little checkboxes in Markdown. So if we go to preview, we can see that they're checkboxes and I can mark them as being done. Yeah, we should, there's questions about how to write a good issue, how to write a good pull request, how to write a good comment or commit message. Like all of those things probably matter. And I don't know if, so let me actually write a couple of things and then I want to come back to that question. So write with Copilot. That's interesting. I wonder if that would be what that would do. We need to capture the test input. Yeah. So maybe that's a better way to phrase it, is the why. We need these to be able to write both an acceptance test for the test input, and that is an issue. And to be able to run our solution on the full input in order to get the desired answer. Yeah, there we go. That's a better way to frame that. Yeah, who, what, when, where, why. And in this case, the why is, I think, particularly useful. I guess the who is sort of me if I say that I'm assigning myself. This is the what. This is the why. And the when and the where don't really matter. Well, I guess the where could be. We'll put these in a new inputs source inputs folder. That would be a part of the where. And the when is just so I guess that we need there's a temporal element here that we need this to be able to write the acceptance test. So this has to come before the acceptance test. So actually, and we can we say that something is a prerequisite for something else? I thought we could. Relationships. Add parent. Is that what I want? This is the... No, but... No, that's, I think, for sub-issues. So maybe that only happens in pull requests. That at this point we can't say one thing is a prerequisite to another, but that when we get to pull requests we can. And it's interesting that Gemini, I can't ask Gemini to do something with this. When I'm editing, I don't even have Copilot anymore. So what would you recommend as an alternative to add the input files? So add the input files. So add the Codyssi inputs for this problem as input files. Oh, and I actually meant to have the link, which I did not do. Edit. The test input from boom bop bop as an input file. The full input as an input file. So do you find this title to be more descriptive? Moving us in the right direction? And I'm totally open to, comments like that from anybody. I am not the best at writing this kind of stuff. Gemini's summaries of my pull requests is way better than my own summaries of my pull requests. So, yeah, I mean, this is part of the issue of cutting things into such small pieces. But, okay. So we got that. Now I'm going to come back. So now if we look at our whole list of issues, right, we now have issue 4. I had started issue 2, but what I want to do here is actually switch to issue 4. And notice that issue 4 is not listed because we have to do that. But now it is. Yeah, so there's not. So are you envisioning that so I was actually planning to keep the creation of issue 4 in the video, like as a thing that happens in the world. Like, oh, there's an issue. We don't have that. I'm going to capture it. I'm going to switch over and work on it and then come back to issue 2. But maybe that's not what you were envisioning. And I guess, yeah, so I did link to 2 here, yes. So we could here say something about this depending on, this will depend on 4. so that we have the necessary input file. Yeah, so there would need to be potentially some explanation depending on how much I cut out. But I think until I'm editing, I don't know that. So I think that just continuing is probably reasonable, and then fix in post, but I don't know. This is not something I've done a lot, so I'm kind of making this up as I go along. Okay, so my idea is we're on branch 2. We have realized we need to do, or we were working on issue 2, and we realized we needed to do issue 4, create and do issue 4. So we created issue 4. That now is showing up here. And I'm going to actually create a new branch for that issue, deal with that issue, and then come back to issue 2 after we've dealt with it. So I'm going to create a branch for issue 4. I do not want to base it on issue 2. I'm going to base it on main. And badoomp. So now I'm on issue 4, and I can, I want to create a folder here called inputs, and then I'm going to want to create 2 files, one of which, actually I can just steal this version here, but probably makes more sense to come back over here. So what I'm looking for is this set of inputs. So that's going to be my test input, new file, test input.txt, boom, bop. And then I'm going to want the full input, which is this great big thing. And I'm going to want to create a new file, which I'm just going to call input.txt and save. There we go. 100 lines of fun and excitement. Now, we seem to have gotten a blank there. That's weird. I'm going to get rid of that. Is that in their stuff? No, I don't know how I ended up with a blank there. Well, I'm not going to worry about it. We got it fixed. So there we go. We have the 2 input files. That, if we go back and look at the issue, the issue says we create the test input, badoomp, we've done that. And that we create the full input, badoomp, we've done that. And so this should, actually, really, I probably don't want to check these until I've merged the branch in, because they're not really solved until they're merged in. Go away. So I think that we've done what needs to be done. Let's push and create the pull request, and then we can merge that in. So we need to make commit messages. It would be reasonable in a lot of circumstances to do this as a single commit. I'm going to actually do it as 2 commits just to highlight sort of breaking things down into small pieces. So create input file for test input for part 1. The input file for the test input that we will need to create the acceptance test. Boom. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. Yeah. And this does repeat. So we could just say we will need this to create the acceptance test. And then that doesn't repeat the first line. Boop. and then full input file for part 1. And I don't really then have anything to say about that. Boom. And if we push those guys, bloink, and then we come back, oops, no, wrong place. Come back over here. Like if we go back to the top, GitHub will tell us that we've pushed to this branch and ask if we want to make a pull request. We can say yes. And notice that the pull request is based on the branch title, not the issue title. And so sometimes this gets not great. So let's tidy up for part 1 of the supplies in surplus problem. So complete 4 closes. That's really what I wanted. Closes. Thank you. Adds 2 input files, 1 for the test input for part 1 of this problem and 1 for the full input. And then thinking about the why, we need the test input, or we will need test input for the acceptance tests and the full input to generate our answer to the problem. Boom. Oh, I guess I can assign myself. I was thinking there was like dependency stuff, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe it'll happen later. Yeah. So, yes, you would typically in the description try to explain not the gory details of how you solve the problem, but if there were any kind of big picture decisions that need to be documented, or you use an algorithm that's maybe not obvious, that would be something to document here. You also want to give people enough information that if they're reviewing the pull request, they have some idea what to expect and how to tell if what you've done actually solves the problem you claim to be solving. So if in this case, we say we've done certain things and that we've closed this issue, is there enough information that if someone was reviewing this pull request, they could convince themselves that you either, yes, had done those things, or no, had not fully done those things, right? So those, you want to provide that kind of information. This pull request is so small because we're, deliberately kind of cutting things into very thin slices, there's not much to say here. But if we were getting into more code stuff, there'd be more to explain. So I'm going to say create pull request. And it tells us that there's no, you know what? I think Gemini is not, well, that's okay, because they wouldn't have Gemini anyway. Let's have Copilot review this pull request. And while that's happening, I'll say hi to Credo1. Hi, Credo1. Welcome. And thank you, Eustace, for catching Credo up on what was going on. So I don't remember. So what does Copilot say? Copilot says this pull request adds 2 new input files to support part 1 of blah, blah, by providing both the test input for acceptance tests and a full input file for generating the problem answer. And so this provides more useful, so this is a better summary, right? It says where the thing is, and that there are 6 test cases, where this is, there are 100 test cases. And so that's actually arguably a better overview than what I wrote. It is partially wrong, though. Add 2 new input files. I think it is. Isn't it 6 and 100? This has 100 lines. Oh, I see. It's really one. Right. I guess it's sort of one test case. Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, so that's actually not correct. But there was no way for it to know that. But no, you're right. So the phrasing's a little off. And I don't expect, we could edit this. Really? Oh, that's interesting and a little weird. Containing 6 lines of input and 100 lines of input. Weird. That seems kind of strange that I can edit what other people are saying. I mean, I get that I can, but that still seems a little odd. Well, go me. I have magic powers. So in fact, thank you. Good catch, Vincent. I didn't notice that. Yes. 6 lines of input. Lines of input needed to solve the full problem for the simple test. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. There we go. And in fact, I'm going to steal this. Fixed. Yeah. Good point. Yes. I'm going to steal this because I think this is a better overview than what I wrote. Or at least combine them. So let's see. Actually, I don't think that my sentence adds anything. I guess we don't need that. Boom. Boom. Bop. Look at that. Yeah, same way that can see the edited there, you can see that we can see what I did. Nice. That's pretty cool. Okay, so zippity-doo-dah. So we'll consider this reviewed, and we will merge this in. Waha. I guess, is there any reason not to do that? I can't think of one off the top of my head. And then we would move on to writing the acceptance test. Yes, right. In practice, you would want to review that. That's a super important point. So I use GitHub Copilot because I'm just sort of doing this on my own. But in practice, you would clearly want to get a member of your team to provide the review. And if you've been pair programming with somebody, they could provide the review sort of at that moment on the assumption that you both agree with the code that you've got in front of you. If you've been working alone, then you should invite somebody else in your team to come in and provide the review that you're looking for. So I'm going to say merge pull request, And I'm going to confirm merge. Boop. And I'm going to delete the branch because I don't like the clutter. And notice that that should have closed number 4, and indeed it did. It closed number 4. So when it's telling us that pull request number 5 closed this branch issue. So, yeah, what Vincent said, Credo. So for students working with a colleague, yesterday we had this conversation of it would be good to have some examples of the process of creating branch issues, creating branches off of issues, creating pull requests from branches, reviewing and merging. And so we're just basically taking a very simple puzzle problem and using that as an example to go through that process. And it's a very simple problem. We're cutting things up into pretty tiny pieces. And so it's not the most realistic thing in the world, but hopefully it highlights the process. And Eustace, I would tend to agree that it's good to get a third person. In the labs that they'll do at the beginning of the class, they're usually in pairs, so there often isn't going to be a third person. So and frankly, to be honest with you, they don't pair program very much anyway. I wish they did. I wish they pair programmed a whole lot more than they do. I think they would generate better work, but that isn't what they tend to do. And so this tends not to be the biggest issue. Also, frankly, the quality of the reviews that the students give each other is not great. They're often like, yeah, looks fine. Because they're often doing reviewing sort of up against the deadline instead of early on. There's a whole lot of issues here about how reviewing happens or doesn't happen. And for the moment, I'm okay. Like, if they would pair program, I would be thrilled if they would pair program and they could just use that as a way to simplify the review process. But it's not always what happens. And I think that, I think they care, but I think they can care in different ways and in different amounts. I mean, there are some people that want to, get a ton out of the class and really, really get a lot of experience. And some people are looking to get by, and that makes a difference. So yeah, motivation is definitely an issue. And for the labs, like, I think their motivation is different when they get to the project and they have an actual customer versus when they're doing the labs and getting to where they can do the project, but that's another kettle of fish. Okay, so now, if we come back to our issues list, we see we have 1 closed issue and we have 3 open issues. Yeah, absolutely. The intrinsically motivated versus extrinsically motivated. Like the great challenge of all teaching ever. Or just being a human. So we're trying to document some process, Chandu. So we're taking a super simple problem and we're just trying to document how we create issues, create branches from issues, create pull requests from branches, and merge things in. With the hope that this would be helpful to students in a kind of second year software design class. That's the idea, if that makes sense. Okay, so here's our set of issues. We've closed one, namely added the input files. Now we could come back to setting up the acceptance test for the example. And so if I come back to GitKraken, oh yes, notice one of the things I'm going to need to do is pull so that we get Oh, pull failed. I need to be on main. Duh. Yeah, so I need to go back to main. I need to pull. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I deleted the feature branch remotely. And that's my attempt to pull here failed because there was not a remote branch anymore. Because I had deleted it from the GitHub side. And you want to come back to main, right? When we merged here, let's go here and go closed. When we merged here, right, this merged into main. So we merged our add the blah, blah, blah branch into main at this point. And then I deleted the branch, so you can't pull for because for doesn't exist remotely anymore. And what you want to do is pull main and bring the remote version of main into what you have here. So we have got our main branch. Now we were working on setup acceptance tests. Boop, boop. Notice it is now behind main by a couple of commits. We could merge main into two. That would be a way of saying take whatever happened in main and add it to our branch, and that would bring two up to catch up. The fast forward would do the same thing. It would, because nothing's happened on two that would conflict, it would just run this ahead to here. We could also do rebase, which basically recreates two on top of the current version of main. And in this setup, fast forward and rebase would do more or less the same thing. Merge would actually create a new merge commit from main into two. That's probably not helpful here. So we could do either fast forward or rebase. I'll do rebase. And now two is up here with main. Two and main are in the same place. And so two will have, if we come back over to VS Code, two has the source inputs directory with the two files. Zippity-doo-dah. Okay, so we could now write a test for this is totally unhelpful. Really, that should just not even be there. That's housekeeping. To edit out of the video. We'll just use JUnit. We're going to keep it simple. So I want a new file. I'm not going to bother with argument parsing because it's just going to be a file name. So we just can take the file name and do the right thing there. Public class acceptance, sure. And so we want to write a test. And public void acceptance. Right? Okay, yeah. It's been a while since I've written Java code, so there are going to be moments where I'm like, is this the syntax? So we're going to want to create, we don't actually need to create an instance of main because that's a static method. So we just want to assume main.main. Oh, but main.main doesn't return anything. We need something that returns something. So, yeah. Yeah, we are going to, I was somehow thinking we wouldn't need to return anything here, but we are going to need something that returns or we don't have a test to run. So we're going to need some kind of, we need some other class or method in this class that does the work. And I think another class makes more sense. So we're going to want new file. What's a reasonable name here? The problem. We are computing the total number of boxes in all the piles. So it's a box counter is the thing. Well, the problem is really part one, which is not a great name. I mean, it could be. I mean, we could just say part one. Oh, and then part one could be the method inside supplies in surplus. Yeah, we could do that. New file, supplies in surplus .java. Boom. Yes, I want a class, which suggests there's probably some way that the system would build these classes for me as I go, but and then we could say we want box count, input file name, boom. And so there's not like a to-do, a Rust to-do, I don't think. So I've usually just done unsupported operation exception, which isn't awesome, but it sort of gets the same point. Oh, I see. You're suggesting that we should pass just the text. There is an unsupported operation exception, which is kind of the closest thing. I don't know if there's an unimplemented. No, I don't think so. Hello, Zitsu. Yes, Java. I know. We're doing an example that will hopefully be useful in software design. So Eustace, coming back to your thing of passing file names, I don't disagree with you. But in this, if we don't pass the file name, then we're going to have to repeat the whole opening and parsing the file business. And I don't really want to repeat that in tests. And we could write that. So okay, let's just call it input, because we could write that parsing in the test code. Actually, it doesn't have to be in the over here. So okay, so we could do that. Almost said let. That's not going to be good. So string input is read input and we'll have inputs test input.txt, and I might need dots and stuff. Oh yeah, so the stream tag still says Rust. Life's a challenge. So we'll just have a read input method. Static string read input string file name to do. We'll throw my new unsupported operation exception. Again, just as a way of avoiding that. I think I did change it after I started the stream. I think that like if you came late, you actually got a more helpful description. But yeah, if you were there right away, I did it after the stream had begun. Not implemented. Oh, that would be. That could be better. Oh, no, stop it. Throw, no, new, not thrown, new, not implemented. Can't spell, not implemented. Oh, that's an error. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Oh, that's kind of nice. That is better. I like that better. Whoa, 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 hello. That's what I want. I want to replace you. Oh, it's a Kotlin thing. That's why I don't know about it. I don't know that I want to introduce that and a whole bunch of questions around that. Wow, I took forever to get there. There we go. So I think we won't mess with that. Oh, an Apache Commons thing. Oh wow. Okay. So unsupported operation exists, and we're 43 minutes into this thing. So, or we're an hour and 43 minutes into this. We're running out of time. So we have our input. We need to create a supplies in surplus. Supplies in surplus. For now, we can just. Oh, we could have actually passed the input in as part of the constructor. I won't bother right now. And then let result be supplies in surplus dot. What did we say the method was? Box count. Oh, this is input and assert equals. I said let. Go me. 43. So that's going to be actually int result and right, that should be static. Or no, I don't think I don't want it to be static. I wanted, yeah, no, that was right. I think it's just a visibility thing. I mean, I could make it static, but I don't think I want to. I think I'll just make it public. Students tend to make everything static, and that's not awesome. Oh, so I am going to need to, this is a place where I, supplies and surplus, there we go. Yeah, but my experience is students, like I say, tend to make everything static, and that's not really, I think, good. That's definitely an anti-pattern. So I'm going to actually go with like creating instances of things. This would be an argument for making the constructor take the file name and then you could just call .box count, but it would make sense to be able to call .box count with the same multiple times with different inputs. So I'll leave it this way. And it is it 43? I don't remember. It is 43, yes. I would actually say int expected result is 43. Boom. Okay. And so that should be a test. Now, why? I've done something wrong here because I'm not, oh, there, no, I am. I can run that and that will fail. Haha, we threw an unsupported operation exception right there, which is what we expected. Nice. Okay. Coolio. And I think if we were to, that like in output? No. Test results. There we go. Yeah. So we got an unsupported operation exception. Cool. Okay. Awesome. And then, so we need to implement this. Actually, we could be like real hardcore again. Do I really want to get that detailed? Trying to decide whether I want to like actually commit and then write read input or just write. Yeah, actually I am going to commit because we could even write a test for read input if we really wanted to get like super fancy. Yeah, but I think committing a failing test is fine because you're in a branch and it's reasonable to have failing tests in a branch. You just don't want a failing test in main. But during development, failing test is reasonable. Otherwise, it's very hard to do anything meaningful because it's certainly in a TDD fashion. Because if you think about like you write the test, then you write the code that passes the test, and then you refactor, it's entirely reasonable to write the test and then commit, and then write the code that makes that test pass. So yeah, I'm going to actually totally have this committed when it's not passing. Now you could, like if you really wanted to tidy up after the fact, you could squash commits or do, GitHub interactive blah, 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 and rearrange your commits to make it all look like that's not how it happened. But I think, in the moment, this is fine. We've got 10 minutes left. And unfortunately, I will need to leave reasonably soon after 4 o'clock because stuff. Yeah, maybe just write the read input. So that we then just get a failing test. Okay, so file. I just want to read the whole thing. I don't remember what the best way to do that is in Java. Read file into string in Java. What does AI tell me? File path, read string from a file path, and I get the contents. So this seems to be the newer thing. Buffered reader is more what I remember, but this probably is a better way to deal with it. So whippity-doo. So blah. So we have file paths. This is going to be file name, goes here. And, oops, I've got a quote that I don't want. And then, so files, presumably I have some sort of import I need to do there. And yeah. And I don't want to print, I want to return. And how am I going to handle my error handling? I think we'll say throws IO exception. And then we can get rid of the try catch business. Hello. Oop up. Here we go. So I'm lost. The separate method doesn't make any sense. In what way? Like it still captures this logic. And I think I can say throws IO exception here. Oh, I see. Like if I inline, have I really accomplished very much here? Meh. It's a fair point. It is basically one line. I mean, I think it's still worth having. I mean, the inlining is not a terrible idea. Inline local variable and inline local variable. Oh, and then I didn't need to import that anymore. So, but I think, there is structure and logic here that we have captured in one place. So I don't know that's a terrible thing to have done. Now if I run this, no such file exception. Okay. So so what is it thinking? Where is this happening from? It's always confusing to me where yeah, I don't know if it's relative to the Java file. Not that one. How about another one, just for fun? Yeah, I don't know if we need to be going up or down. Like, is it source? Is it actually starting way at the top? Oh, hey, look. It was source slash. And now this throws an unsupported operation exception because we haven't written that yet. Yay. Okay, so we have a test. We can commit a test. So this is the acceptance test. That's the bit that matters. And we also need to so stub supplies in surplus. Need a backtick on that. Box count. This is the method called to do the actual work. We needed it to write we needed the stub to write the acceptance test. Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right, because that's like half an hour of stuff there. Okay, let's unstage that. Let's get rid of all this for now. Let's come back to the code. Yeah, in the original place. Okay. So what have we done? So to write the acceptance test, acceptance, we read the test input file. We created an instance of supplies in surplus. We called box count on that input, and we asserted that the result was 43. We created a helper method read input that actually did the reading. Interestingly, we could have actually put the source inputs, built that into this so that all you had to pass in was test inputs. Probably not going to chase that rabbit right now, but we could do that. So we create a path from the given file name. We then read the contents of that file into a string and return that. This part here assumes that there is a method box count that takes a string and returns an int. So we had to stub that. So we've got our method box count, takes a string input and returns an int, currently throws a new unsupported operation exception, which will fail when we call it. So if we run the test, we get this Java lang unsupported operation exception telling us that failed. And I think if we open this up, it will tell us that it happened at box count on line 5 and takes us right here. So that the acceptance test exists, compiles, runs, currently fails because we haven't solved the problem. But this would be a reasonable place to commit. And then we could finish this pull request, or at least create that pull request. So I'm going to start by staging this and say that we stub supplies in surplus, spelling, box count. This stubs the method box count, which which will contain the desired logic when we solve the problem. It currently returns or throws, not returns, throws an unsupported operation exception because we haven't implemented it yet. Haven't implemented it yet. Doop-a-doop-a-doo, and check. And then this implement the acceptance test for the test input. This reads runs our currently incomplete code on the, thank you, appreciate that, Eustace, and checks the result. Boom. Boom. And if we push that, and then we come back to here, we should have the ability to compare and make a pull request. Set up an acceptance test for the example in part 1. And this is going to close number 2. So this stubs supplies in surplus box count, which is what we'll use to actually solve the problem, and writes and adds an acceptance test that checks that box count, returns the expected value on the given test input. Boom. Oh, I can assign myself because that'll be fun. And I'm curious to see what Copilot has to say. Go, Copilot, go! Tell us things. Give me a better summary than the one that I wrote. Go, little computer. Go, little computer. Is there anything else interesting to say? Not really. Come on, you can do it, Copilot. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. There we go. Ooh, it had a suggestion. It had several suggestions. Holy moly. Wow, this is exciting. 10 years later. So what did it say? Nitpick. The helper method read input is only used within this test class. Consider making it private. Okay. I can buy that. Now, would I want to do that here? Well, maybe Make read input private, commit change. Batching must be done for the files tab, because that might make more sense, is to do them as batch. So yes, you're right, probably read them first. Hard-coded file paths can be brittle across environments. Consider loading the test environment via the class path using get resources as stream. Yes. So my read input might not work well on Windows. So get resource as stream. We take the file name, and then we read all bytes and turn that into a string. Interesting. Yeah, I might sort of skip that one. That seems to complicate things. Let's read through the rest. Include a to-do or comment to explain when and how. That's actually probably a smart plan. Implement the box count method to calculate the number of boxes based on the input string. Currently a placeholder and throws the Implementation should be added once the requirements for box calculation are finalized. Well, we probably need to change some of that, but that's not a terrible thing to do. So actually, I don't disagree with that as an idea, even if I'm not entirely sold on the text. So I think maybe we mark this guy as resolved. So we can say this is probably more complicated than we really want to deal with in this example. And we say comment and resolve. And then if I go to files, yeah, so that's probably worth being clear about, that it is a good idea in principle. Where's my comment? Edit. This is a good idea in principle. In principle, but probably more, yeah. And then, where was the other one? Okay, this one I definitely want. This one, if I take this, I'll end up with a commit, and I would have to then make changes if I don't like the because I don't think I can I edit this? Oh, maybe I could edit Copilot's message. Yes. Implement the box count method. Well, clearly should have backticks. That's I'm fine with. Implement. So I think that's the line I would get rid of, because that's just doesn't describe our situation. Update comment. I'm all about backticks. I think backticks are awesome. Frankly. Okay, so that I've got a batch. Now, what do I do to commit? I hit the button that says commit. Whoa, what happened over there? That's weird. And it's not. Oh, that's very strange. Oh. Huh. That is just super messed up. What if I come over here, come back here, and did that commit? What did that do? Oh, did I lose my... I think I lost my commit suggestions. Add suggestion to batch. That's super annoying. And here I want to edit. Oh, it's actually kept the edits. That is so strange. And again, it's just totally messed up. What if I make everything smaller? No, I've lost it again. Add suggestion to batch. Add suggestion to batch. No, I don't even have it. There we go. Oh, now it's over here. Haha. So, makes read input private, and adds comments to box count, oops, indicating that it's a stub that needs to be filled in. Boom. Okay. And could do another review, but I think it's just going to tell us the same thing. Oh, actually, I meant to look at the, let me make this a little bigger. What are the two things it had low confidence on? Barrel name expected result uses snake case. Oh, it does. Poop. Yep, that's bad me. And we should have Java doc on box count. Yes, that's also probably true. Okay, it's 15 minutes after, 13 minutes after if you want to be picky, and I really do need to do some other stuff. So I might come back to this. I don't know when, but we'll run this past KK and see whether she thinks this is heading in a useful direction or not, and how much editing needs to happen. But in the meantime, tomorrow, Sunday, 29 June, 10 to noon, CDT UTC -5. Evolutionary computation documentation festival continues. Boom, bop. Then no streams the following weekend, 5 and 6 July, because I'll be at a family reunion event in Wisconsin. We'll also be celebrating my mother's 87th birthday, so that's pretty cool. And then I think no stream Saturday, 12 July, because we're having a computer science alumni meetup in Minneapolis on the 12th. So I will be very impressive. I don't think I have any relatives that cross 90. I don't think. So I'll be meeting up with a bunch of computer science alums in Minneapolis on the 12th, but I think there will be a stream on Sunday, 13 July. But that kind of depends on how the details of the 12th play out and what time I get back. But I'll share on Discord when we get closer to that time. So there would be presumably an EC stream there on the 13th if I'm back. So, okay. So you're all wonderful human beings. Thank you very much for your help and your time. We will talk to you later. Goodbye.